time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed, on a Friday. Great to have you with us all across America and Canada and wherever else you may be watching around the world. Whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, listening via the podcast. Lots to do over the next 60 minutes. We will be joined by our friend Robert Littal from Black Sports Online. His usual weekly visit with us to talk about some of the top stories of the week around the sports world. We'll get into it with him. Tino Pattigno is here because it's a Friday. It's a NASCAR Friday. So we'll get some thoughts with him on this week's race in Nashville. It's the Cracker Barrel. We'll talk about that, see what he has to say about last week's Coca-Cola 600 with Kyle Larson attempting to run the double, was unable to do so. We'll talk about that some as well. There is hockey to get to, a whole bunch of stuff, but we started out in the NBA, and Sam Yarnell is here, and the Knicks are still here. Because they are not done yet, Sam. They showed up in a big way on Thursday night at Madison Square Garden, basically winning wire to wire, and really dominating. Really the most dominating performance we've seen from either team in this Eastern Conference final. Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson both showing up in a big way, and the Knicks get the win to force a Game 6 back in Indianapolis. And look, I'll say the same thing that we've said time and time again in these situations. When it comes to teams like Indiana being in this moment where you're up 3-1, and you have a chance to close it out in Game 5 and you don't, and then you have Game 6 on your home floor, or home ice as it may be, because all of these conference finals were basically in a similar situation at 3-1. Going into Game 5, and this is the only one that makes it to a Game 6, you better finish it in Game 6 because you don't want to have to face that Game 7 and the potential of blowing that 3-1 lead. And in the case of the Pacers, that Game 7 being back at Madison Square Garden in New York, although the Knicks have not been very good at home in this postseason. So everybody who says that, I kind of chuckle because the Knicks have been better on the road than they've been at home in this postseason. But all that having been said, I certainly give the Knicks a puncher's chance. Tom Thibodeau has changed the rotation. He's playing guys off the bench. We cannot crush him. The last 2 games now, he is giving run to guys off the bench. Landry Shamet has come off the bench and been really valuable for this team, especially on the defensive end, in spelling Jalen Brunson. And Karl Anthony Towns gets spelled enough because he gets into foul trouble in every game anyway, so he always gets a few minutes on the bench. And here the Knicks are still very much alive as we get ourselves a Game 6 on Saturday in Indianapolis.
Yeah, obviously a wire-to-wire win is impressive no matter when it comes in the playoffs, yep. Jason. And quite frankly, it was a great win for the Knicks and a great job to force Game 6 because now we don't have to go 6 days without any major sports being played besides baseball, any major playoff sports, I guess, which would truly suck. Thank God that we have one of these games to watch over the weekend now. But at the end of the day... It seemed like it was a lot of things
hold on.
Did
David Ardsman just enter the chat? Because I got it at the end of the day. All right.
It felt like it was a bunch of things that aren't sustainable for the Knicks to be able to come back and win what would take 3 games in a row, including, I agree with you in the fact that I'm chuckling at everyone saying that the Knicks just have to force it back to Madison Square Garden. Really? Because like Jason said, they haven't been great at home in this playoffs. And also, do you know anything about the history between the Pacers and the Knicks in Game 7 at the Garden? Like, we've seen this movie before, and it didn't end well for New York. So I'm not sure why everyone's like, oh, well, they just got to force it back to the Garden now. No, they've got to win 3 straight games, which in any sort of major playoffs is next to impossible to do. And oh, by the way, in this first game that the Pacers lost of the theoretical 3 that the Knicks would have to win in a row, Tyrese Halliburton put up, 7 shots?
Him and Miles Turner were both
Tyrese Halliburton was non-existent in this game. And now do you project that to happen back-to-back more times? The Knicks defense has been great against him, especially last night. But do I think they could do it another 2 times in a row? I don't know. I mean, I came into this series thinking the Knicks would win, should win, and could win. And we're 5 games in now, and I seem to have no confidence in the team I wanted to win this series.
I have no confidence in my ability to pick anything in this series because everything that I've thought is going to happen from game to game has been completely wrong. The Knicks defensively stepped up in a big way in this game. As much as we could talk about, the number of shots Halliburton was getting, the Knicks did some things in this game from a defensive standpoint that certainly opened your eyes. And again, the lineup changes that Tom Thibodeau has made, I think, have certainly paid some dividends. I think early in that game 6, you're going to want to watch, sort of what Pacers team comes out. Are they tight? Because this really is, they're going to view it, and I'm sure Rick Carlisle is going to try to stress the importance of this sort of being the must-win for them, not wanting to have to go back to New York for Game 7 at Madison Square Garden. And Jalen Brunson, how about this, by the way? Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, one of only now 3 duos to go for 20 points in a conference final series in every game. Only 3 duos have done it in the history of the NBA, and they're one of them. One of them was Kobe and Shaq, I think. Another was Elgin Baylor and Wilt or something like that. They showed the number last night, but one of only 3 to ever do it in the history of the NBA. That's pretty special company to find yourself in for those like Mike Greenberg who like to say that it's only Jalen Brunson carrying the Knicks all the way through this run to the Eastern Conference Finals. Karl Anthony Towns, who's playing on a bum knee right now, he could barely jump. He went to go try to dunk a basketball last night. He's 7 feet tall. He couldn't even get above the rim. That's how bad his knee is. That'll also be worth watching in the next game as well. And also keep an eye in the next game on Bradley coming off the bench for the Pacers. He left this game. Tony Bradley left with a hip strain in the third quarter. He has been key off the bench in trying to sort of negate some of what they get from Mitchell Robinson in this series. He may not be available in that Game 6. That is also something worth keeping an eye on in the next game as well. You know who's happiest about all of this, though, Sam? You know who's loving every second of this? The Oklahoma City Thunder. They're loving it. Loving the fact that these two teams are still playing. They're going to beat each other up for at least another game. They're rooting for Game 7. Soften up whoever they're getting in the NBA Finals. Thunder just chilling out there waiting. We're coming back. We got some hockey to get to. We have a Stanley Cup Final rematch. It'll be the Oilers and the Panthers after the Oilers did away with the Stars. We'll get to it next. Coming up in 10 minutes, my man, our friend Robert Littal, Black Sports Online founder, will hang out with us. We'll get some thoughts with him on some of the top stories of the week. What does he think of the Stephon Diggs boat party gone awry? We heard Nick Ferguson's thoughts on it yesterday on the show. Pink powder, all that good stuff. Sam Yarnell, the Oilers took down the Stars 6-3 in Game 5 of their Western Conference Final Series. They advanced to the Stanley Cup Final, where they will meet, wait for it, the Florida Panthers in a rematch of last year's Stanley Cup Final. And look, what else is there to say about what this Oilers team has been able to do here in back-to-back years? They got to Jake Ottinger early. What did you make of the decision to pull Ottinger earlier in that game? Down 3-0. Do you have a problem with it? I don't.
It didn't matter. Nothing mattered what you were going to do, right? You were playing against a freight train. You were standing right in the middle of the tracks, and that it's as simple as that. The thing about this series is, ever since Dallas won Game 2, Edmonton did not trail. Game 1. Dallas won Game 1. Edmonton did not trail again in the series. They ripped off 4 straight wins, blew them out of the barn in the clincher. This thing was fun to watch from a hockey perspective because I like blowouts. I also like close games, but blowouts are fun every once in a while. This wasn't even a game.
Did you have money on it? Wait.
They ripped off those 3 goals. It was like 8 minutes to go in the first period. I was like, there's no way this is the real score. What is going on here? It didn't matter whether it was Ottinger, whether it was they could have traded for Sergei Bobrovsky in the middle of that game somehow and put him in the net, and it wouldn't have mattered. Edmonton was a freight train in that series. They were gonna run all over Dallas, and even when Dallas scored those clutch goals, you still knew they didn't have a chance.
I'm gonna say this though,
is unstoppable.
I'm gonna say this. It's easy to make Ottinger the fall guy here, but at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and go through each and every goal and how and go through the X's and O's. I am not the guy to do that when it comes to hockey. But go look at the first goal of that game. I mean, a guy's camped out in front of the net. I mean, you got to give your goalie a shot as well. And that first goal of the game, which basically sets the tone, early on, they didn't give Ottinger a shot. I mean,
3 minutes into the game.
Yeah.
3 minutes into the game.
Yeah, you're not giving Ottinger a shot, and you're basically taking the crowd out of the game in that moment. And I know they get back into it and get it to within 1 before Edmonton, reopens the lead a little later on. Connor McDavid does.
They got it to within 1, and then like a minute later, Connor McDavid outran the entire Stars team. He was just like, I'm the best hockey player on the face of the planet, and scored a goal. It was this game. That's the thing about this game, man. It was like every time you thought Dallas had a chance, Edmonton just stomped on their throat again. They are the hottest team in hockey right now.
They are. And look, but a lot of people are going to start asking the question, why should we believe anything different's going to happen in the Stanley Cup Final than what took place last year? You have 2 teams meeting up, and they're very much the same teams in many regards as the teams that squared off last year.
Well, I will say this. Florida is... I think Florida is more physical than any team Edmonton has faced so far. And I know this was a physical series at times. There was the thing we talked about with Dennis Bernstein earlier this week, the Darnell Nurse hit and all that stuff. But Florida's brand of physical hockey to me just seems, especially in these playoffs, like it's at a different level. It has a lot to do with adding Brad Marchand at the deadline. I mean, that guy is obviously going to be the heartbeat of physicality, and that's a guy who's been here a bazillion times before, right? He's got playoff experience out the wazoo. So that is one way that I do think Florida does have an advantage compared to where they were at last year. But Jason, man, it's tough to pick who to give an advantage to in this series, because it's like Florida's going to come out punching in a physical sense. They're going to beat you up. But Edmonton's going to come out punching in a goal-scoring sense. They're going to be flying all over the ice. Can Florida keep up with them from a physical perspective? It's something that I can't wait until next week to learn.
Yeah, and the odds maker is basically telling you they think it's a toss-up series. Edmonton at -114, Florida at -106. I wonder if there is any advantage, because both teams played such short series here. And frankly, both teams have played pretty much short series throughout much of this postseason. I wonder if there's any advantage in the long layoff. In what, 6 days off, basically a week. If you're talking about the Panthers, I wonder if there's an advantage either way for either team, or if it just comes down to how these coaches go about using that time to prepare these two teams. This is one of those times, a lot of times I talk about coaching can be overrated. This is one of those times where I think coaching is not overrated, and how you keep these teams prepared, how you keep these teams engaged could say a lot and go a long way in determining who winds up winning this series.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think to what, we were just talking about, like it plays into both teams, both strengths and weaknesses, right? From an Edmonton perspective, it's the rest versus rust conversation, right? When you have so much skill and firepower in Draisaitl and McDavid, are they able to maintain form over a week-long stretch of not seeing real 5-on-5 hockey every other day at worst, or every other day at real worst? And then on a Florida side, you give them an advantage initially because, you're going to have a little bit of healthier bodies for that physical brand of hockey they play. But at the same time, the amount of skill that you rely on, it's kind of the inverse of the Oilers thing, right? Is that amount of skill that you're relying on, is that going to fleet you when it really needs to not? It's a very interesting dichotomy, and I think you're right when we see how these coaches handle it, and especially when you break down the nuts and bolts of hockey, right? Throughout a series, how they change up a line, loss to win, win to loss, and so on and so forth, how they'll change up lines and change who's scratched and who's not, especially when you've got expanded playoff rosters. I do think it's interesting, and I think it's something that they're going to analyze and use countless statistics, analytics, data points, so on and so forth over the course of the next 5 to 6 days to figure out exactly how they're going to start. And I bet you that right after game one, that whole plan is going to change completely.
Stuart Skinner, by the way, we keep talking about his Conn Smythe odds, now at 80-1. Plus 8,000. If you want to bet Stuart Skinner to win Conn Smythe. He was down to 50. At one point, he was, 100? Now he's 80-1. Connor McDavid, plus 110. Sergei Bobrovsky, plus 250. We're coming back with Robert Littal next. All right, this Friday edition of Sports Wrap continues, and if it's a Friday, that can only mean one thing. This man is here, Robert Littal, founder of Black Sports Online, is hanging out with us. Now, I could be wrong, but are you representing Nick colors on this show? Is that because that's what it is? Because that looks like Nick's colors to me.
No, my 4-year-old, because they have graduations for everything now, graduated from pre-K. And my wife said we're all going to wear orange and blue. So, I'm a married man. And when the wife says something, you go, it's put out for you like you're 4 years old and you just put it on.
Well, can't we just pretend you're supporting my Knicks? Can't we just pretend? Your wife would not have known. She's probably not going to watch this.
She doesn't like New York. She's in LA. She's a California true and true. She doesn't like New York.
The Californians. All right, fair enough. I was just hoping you might be giving me a little bit of backup, but okay, fair enough. All right. All right, so let's talk about a story we talked about in yesterday's show. We had Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, hanging out with us on the program, and we were talking about this Stephon Diggs situation, and I'm curious to get sort of your take on it. So he's on a boat. Now I have to admit. Now I can't. I have to give an admission here. I did not know he was dating Cardi B. I don't keep up with the love lives of every professional athlete and who they're dating. So I did not know. I'm sure you knew because you're in the know on these things. I didn't know he was dating Cardi B, but I'm sure you did. So I find out he's dating Cardi B, and then this story gets a little more interesting because he's on a boat with a bunch of women, and it didn't look like any of them were Cardi B. And then there's this pink powdery substance, which we'll get to in a second. Let's start with the Cardi B part of this. If you are Stephon Diggs, and you are in a relationship with somebody as prominent as Cardi B, what are you doing on a boat with all these women that aren't Cardi B? Is it the Chris Rock thing? Is it, a man's only as faithful as his options? Like, what is this?
I think, like you said, once you cross over into that world, and I don't know if you remember the video when Diggs was on the Vikings, and they asked the Vikings players who was the one player on the team that they wouldn't want dating their little sister. And to a man, they all said Diggs, every single one of them, without hesitation. This is not a unusual situation for Stephon Diggs, for people that have followed him throughout his career. He's a bit of a ladies' man, and he seems to like the Instagram models and the rap girls and things of that nature. I think this, just because Cardi B is probably more famous than all of them, has come to the, like you said, the mainstream attention. I think Mike Vrabel made a huge mistake even acknowledging it, because now it becomes a bigger story than probably what it probably should be.
All right. Now you've got the pink powder. Now, yeah. I don't go to any parties where there is this pink powdery substance. Do you have any insight? Is anybody been able to speculate on what this sort of stuff actually is?
Yeah, so apparently it's called, pink cocaine is one of the names for it, but it's not quote unquote actually cocaine. It's some sort of mix to make some sort of aphrodisiac, ketamine and some other things that are in there, to keep you in the mood. A little bit of some of the stuff that Shannon Sharp, maybe promotes on his show, to keep him, going and things of that nature. Now, nobody knows specifically what it was. I think that's really the concern of the Patriots is like, we can't have a wide receiver looking like Tony Montana, on a boat. But the way that he stared in the camera, giving it to the young ladies, I just have to believe that it was nothing that would get the authorities involved. Maybe some, something that you can get at your local, store to mix together and stuff like that. But I don't think it was anything nefarious.
What Nick Ferguson said on the show yesterday, though, really stands out to me. It's the fact that, the cameras, the fact that people are like recording this stuff and you're around these people that are dumb enough to be recording these things and then releasing them or putting them out on social media. Like, it's one thing if you're going to do something like this, whether people want to judge it and say it's stupid, irresponsible, all these different things. I wouldn't want to be judged on the worst thing I've ever done in my life. Thankfully, there weren't any cameras there when I did it. But and we've all had these indiscretions, I'm sure. Most people have. I know there's somebody at home right now clutching their pearls going, I've never done anything bad in my life. All right, bless your heart. You're the one. But, it's the fact that there's cameras and everybody's recording everything these days.
Correct.
That these athletes just simply can't ever let their guard down. And I'm not saying what he was doing was okay. It's just the point that there's just never a moment where anybody can sort of do these things.
You have to be more careful. You have to be aware. And I blame Cardi B for this, because, she wants to be, she's a star and rappers want to be on camera. They want to show the baddies. They want to show the yacht and the watches and all of that stuff. Professional athletes a little bit different. That should have been a quote unquote no camera party, if you know what I mean. Like that should have been TMZ should have had a drone trying to find out what was going on there. There should not be 4K iPhone footage from inside the boat. So that's something that I think she's gonna have to learn, that she's dealing with a professional athlete. So the way that he moves has to be a little bit differently.
It's a drop the phone in a bucket when you get on the boat sort of thing.
I've been, in my youth, I've been around some athletes and some situations and some rappers where you go to a certain house party, you go to a certain event, and that phone, gets taken at the front.
Really?
Yeah. Just for that, I've seen some, like you said, I've seen some things in my day, Jason. But it's for that reason, is that it's their private life, and what they do in private. If it's not, affecting what they're doing on the field, they don't want people to know about.
I'm trying to think if I've ever been to a party where I had to drop a phone like at the entrance. I don't think so. They
put it in a little case, and you can't, it locks the case, and you have a little something. You come back and they unlock it for you. See, I'm not
that important. I've never been important enough to go to a party where I've had to do something like that.
Trust me, you wasn't missing anything that wouldn't scar you for the next 20 years.
Robert Littal is the founder of Black Sports Online, hangs out with us every Friday on the show. He's coming back for one more segment. I want to get to some NBA with him. Anthony Edwards didn't seem all that broken up about losing in the conference finals. And Pascal Siakam's interesting interaction with one Indianapolis reporter. It's all next. All right, coming up in 10 minutes, we'll shift gears, literally, to NASCAR. This week's race in Nashville. Tino Pattigno, our NASCAR insider, does a good job on the weekends with his bets over on SiriusXM's NASCAR radio. You can see him on Tubi as well. We'll get some thoughts with him on this weekend's race, which you can watch over on Prime Video. But we continue the conversation with our friend Robert Littal, the founder of Black Sports Online, joins us every Friday here on the show. All right, I want to get to some NBA with you. as I stare at your orange and blue and keep pretending that you're just here supporting me and the Knicks as they get ready for Game 6 on Saturday in Indianapolis. So after the Knicks beat the Pacers last night, there was this interesting exchange between Greg Doyle of the Indianapolis Star, I believe it's still the Indianapolis Star there, and Pascal Siakam. They got into it a little bit in the post-game press conference. I want people to listen, then you can react on the other side.
Can you make sense of it for those of us who don't play this game at this level? Like, you know it was a stake, and you're saying they played harder than you guys. You didn't fight them hard enough. How is that possible?
What do you mean?
How is it possible to not fight hard enough in games?
What are you talking about? They played harder than us. It's okay. We played hard, but they played harder. What's your point? I don't get it.
My point is, you're saying you guys got out-fought, and I'm saying...
That happens in the game, though. That's basketball.
In Game 5, you didn't play them? You're saying...
You're good? You're good, bro? You're looking for something, I know, but damn. No, but I'm telling you, though. I told you. What else you want me to tell you?
Well, what you tell me how. That's all I'm asking.
Well, what about you tell me? So go ahead. Who's this guy? Who's this guy? What's your name, bro? Oh.
Yeah. Who's this guy? Oh. So Siakam obviously didn't appreciate the fact that he felt like Greg Doyle was fishing. You've been in these post-game pressers. I've been in these post-game pressers. And it did kind of feel like he was getting pressed by Doyle because Doyle wasn't getting the answer he wanted. He wanted Siakam to throw somebody under the bus or give some sort of provocative answer, and Siakam wasn't acquiescing to that request.
Yeah, I've said this for a very long time, and I've told you this before, that media people, even though we are trained and educated and have all of this experience, for whatever reason, when it comes to asking questions and like human interaction, it's awful. And it becomes very specific as the playoffs go on, because you're getting a more diverse level of media. It's not just the beat reporters, even though he is in Indiana, so he should probably know better than anybody else. It is our job to ask tough questions. But once someone gives us an answer, and that's the answer, there's really no more that we can, do. Everybody, I guess, is looking for the headline. Everybody wants the hot take. Everybody wants to be Stephen A. Smith, and Doyle, has a reputation. But I've never understood, Jason, reporters that actually seem to get upset and bothered, by the players. It's like, we're just the reporters. What are we upset? We're not playing. It's our job just to, report about the story. He seemed like something else was bothering him, and it touched a nerve with him. And that's really, it's not a good sign as a reporter when you become the story. And that's happened to me before, and it's not a good feeling, because it's really not our jobs to be the story. It's our job to tell the story.
Yeah, well, there are some guys that do like being the story. And I'm not saying that was his intention here. I've talked to Greg a ton over the last 15, 16 years, almost 20 years I've been talking to Greg Doyle. And he's done some great work over the years, but in this instance, it just felt like he was fishing for something. Siakam didn't give it to him, and he wasn't happy about it. Up next is Anthony Edwards. Speaking of post-game pressers, he gave an interesting quote after the T-Wolves got knocked out in 5 games, where he basically was asked, hey, how disappointed are you? How upset are you about the fact that you just got bounced in 5 games? And he basically said, I'm fine. We'll be back. We'll be back. I'm 23 years old. I'm going to get a zillion cracks at this because I'm so young. And there's got to be veteran guys looking at him going, man, you just don't get it. You never know how many shots you're going to get at being in a conference final, especially in a stacked Western Conference the way it is, Robert.
Yeah, I always age myself when I point out Dan Marino to young kids. It's that, I mean, I think we both saw Dan Marino in his prime. It was like 4 Super Bowls easy. Oh, he lost one, no problem. He'll be back. I mean, look at that arm. Look at those stats. 20 years later, it never happens. You see individuals maybe win one championship or get to one Super Bowl, like a Matt Ryan, never get, back. You have to wonder. You look at, Jokic, best player, in the world right now, I would say is the consensus. They're struggling to get back. Giannis, the MVP all the time in the race, struggling and may never, get back. Phoenix, so I think he is young, and I think that goes to some of his immaturity, his inconsistency. They have a lot of free agents. If Julius Randle and Naz Reid and Walker decide they want to leave, there goes their depth, and it's just more on him. I just think it's more ignorance, than I mean, he is. I mean, at 23, I probably would have thought the same thing, if I was him. Hey, I'm Anthony Edwards. I'm already an all NBA and everything. Of course, I'm going to be back, 4, 5, 6 times. But ask Kevin Garnett how that went in Minnesota. So
I will tell you. I'll tell you, and we got to go. But I'll tell you, man, I was 25, 26 years old, New York City, working at Sirius Satellite Radio. I thought I was just scratching the surface. I'm going to be working for NBC and ESPN one day. I thought I was going to be Stephen A. Smith. Not to say it's turned out terribly, but, it's not always that easy.
Where your path
you don't.
You're going to go.
Coming up in 10 minutes, odds and ends. And we take a look ahead. Try to give you Monday's headlines today. All of that still to come. But if it's a Friday on SportsWrap, aside from Robert Littal of Black Sports Online, who joins us every Friday on the show, it means this guy joins us. Tino Pattigno, our NASCAR insider, hangs out with us on the program, fresh off a visit to Charlotte, North Carolina last week and the Coca-Cola 600, where you got to watch Ross Chastain surprise some people and take the checkered flag in Charlotte at one of the crown jewel races for NASCAR. And let's start there because we didn't have a Monday show, so we didn't get to do a recap of the race, Tino. How surprising was it to see Ross Chastain capture the checkered flag there?
Oh, it was very surprising considering the fact he started in dead last and came all the way to first to get the victory there. Not only that, that's the first time that's ever happened at that type of racetrack in Charlotte in the Coca-Cola 600 since 1971. So really impressive stuff by Ross Chastain. You got to continue to double down too because William Byron absolutely dominated that race, led 283 laps. Like you said, I was there in person. Byron was the guy all day. We talked about him earlier on in the week. He was plus 800, said that was great value. He started third. He was the driver to beat. Kyle Larson exited early. Maybe he was someone that had a chance, to go up against Willie B. Denny Hamlin battled too. Phenomenal race overall from that standpoint. And then to cap things off, you have Ross Chastain there. Ross, to keep in mind, crashed in practice, was 35-1 heading into that race, and ultimately, like you said, got the victory. So pretty good for him.
What does it say about Kyle Larson, his attempt to run the double? We saw what happened at the Indy 500. He crashes out there and then tries to go over to Charlotte, and obviously unsuccessful in his attempt to win there. What did we learn this time around with him trying to run the double?
I think we can say we've continued to learn how hard that is to just even complete, right? We were talking about it before. Well, he's got to at least finish all the laps. No, it's just so much harder than that. Even in NASCAR, where he's, as he should be, regarded as one of, if not the best driver in the sport, still crashed out of that too, right? So both forms of motorsport are unbelievably hard. Trying to do both is almost impossible, like we've seen. And I think the one thing that I've learned personally, extra tip of the cap to Tony Stewart, who finished in 6th and 3rd when he did complete the double back in 2001. So I would love to see Larson continue to try. I believe that was his final attempt at both, at least for a while. Yeah. Wow. And he's come out and said it costs a lot of money to do something like that, and he's done it back-to-back years. It hasn't worked out. I don't think 3 in a row would be possible. I would love to see him compete in IndyCar in some fashion, especially the 500. But I think that he wants to make it his primary focus if he ever is going to do that rather than the double.
All right, fair enough. Let's focus on this week's race. Nashville is up. This had a wild finish, 5 overtimes last year with Joey Logano coming out on top. How do you look at it this year?
We have the first driver that I got to keep in mind is Kyle Larson. Just because he did poorly last week, that's a big key factor heading into this one, where it doesn't really matter. He crashed out. I wouldn't necessarily be worried about their confidence or their team strategy or anything doing too much. If anything, I'd be worried people may think, oh, they're cold right now, don't bet on them. Not the case. This is Kyle Larson. If anything, he's going to have a bounce back week. Look to get some revenge in this one. He opens up as a favorite as usual, has the best average finish at this racetrack. Now, aside from that, we'll put that away. Remember Kyle Larson as usual. Keep him in mind each week. The Toyotas were specifically fast at this racetrack last year. Christopher Bell led stage 1 and stage 2. Denny Hamlin looked like the car to beat in stage 3. And then the overtime started happening. And once that happened, finishing positions changed drastically. We're talking about, for instance, Ryan Preece was one driver I was running 20th to 25th all day, finished in 4th. Joey Logano, a 15th place car max all day, won the race. So that's something when we look from last year to this year, there will be changes with the drivers that have started up front. We'll probably finish there.
Yeah, when we talk about the odds, Kyle Larson right now plus 550 is your favorite. Denny Hamlin is 6-1. Christopher Bell at plus 650. William Byron plus 850. And then Ryan Blaney at 10-1 with Tyler Reddick at 11-1. Bubba Wallace way down the list at 50-1. Why is that?
It's because they haven't brought speed to this mile-and-a-half style of racing, especially when it goes to those nighttime conditions. This is a night race. I will say the only blessing in disguise for them could potentially be that Tyler Reddick was really fast last weekend at Charlotte. His teammate Reddick is sitting at 11-1. That's a more reasonable number that we have seen for those 23-11 drivers this year. It's just a tough combination of things right now. They've struggled to finish races on the lead lap for that 23 car. 50-1 is a price we haven't normally seen thus far this season, as you alluded to, but I just feel like it's where they're at right now. He could be a stage points guy like he has been, to be right there, within the top 12 in standings at this point. But to me, he's just not a driver that's going out and getting these race wins. And it's been shown on the racetrack, especially with their past finishes being so poor.
All right, in the final minute here, real quick, give me somebody you could see in the back of the pack when we look at the odds that could be dangerous here.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned back of the pack, because that's Ross Chastain. They have poor qualifying positions every Saturday. We saw it last weekend. Well, here's something you guys got to know. 13-1 to win this race. I love this. He won this race in 2023. He can go back-to-back. Strong momentum from last weekend. The backup car they had for Charlotte was the same backup car he was going to have for Nashville this weekend. Well, that backup may have been the primary, because whatever it was setup-wise or how the car handled, definitely showed to be the case strongly in this one. Ross Chastain 13-1. I could see him going back-to-back.
That's Tino Pattigno. Catch him on the weekends, SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, handing out some betting advice there. Also over on Tubi as well. Always appreciate you, my friend. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the racing, and we will catch you next week.
Thank you.
We're coming back with more Sports Wrap Odds and Ends. Wraps it up next. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for another week. Some reminders before we say goodbye. One, make sure to check out Sports Wrap Weekends. Available on many of these same affiliates. If not, check your local listings for time and schedule. It's everything you miss from this show that we do throughout the week in a nice, tidy little 30-minute package. Make sure to go and check that out. Also, Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast. It is this show in an audio version. You can catch us on the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcasts. Go and subscribe today. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon, you name it. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can subscribe and listen to this show wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Sports Wrap with Jason Page. You can watch the show on Spotify. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to that. It's free. The show is available commercial free. You also get SportsWrap shorts as a bonus. Go and check that out. Clips from the show, sometimes clips not from the show. We put up short clips, sometimes news breaks, especially on the weekends. And when it does, we are there to give you analysis on breaking stories on the weekends with SportsWrap shorts, available on our SportsWrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. All right, without any further delays, ladies and gentlemen, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends before we predict the weekend's headlines and tell you what's going to happen. Some news from the world of the NCAA and the men's basketball tournament and March Madness. Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, saying, hey, you know what? We might have to expand to 72 or 74 teams when it comes to March Madness. And Sam, I just say, why not go to 128? Add another round of games. If the excuse is, well, we want to make sure, that a couple other teams get in to have the opportunity that might be good enough, to win the tournament. If we're doing that, then let's just go to 128 at this point. Why stop at 72 or 74? We all know eventually this thing's going to 128 anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a horrible idea. I think it's bad for the sport of college basketball, especially a sport that we've seen diminish over the past 5 years. We're getting close to the 10-year range. It's really tough when you're looking at a sport in college basketball that has been discussing this seemingly for 30 years, it feels like, quite literally longer than I've been alive. And then they added the first 4 games as a consolation to people at some point, because they just needed a little bit more of a cash grab because it's the NCAA. And that seemed to tide them over until this whole NIL thing came along. And then they were like, wait a second, now we're really not making enough money. So this seems to be their answer. I don't buy it. I hate it. College football, let's expand the playoff to 32 teams maybe. College basketball, stay right where you are.
All right, on Friday's edition of SportsWrap, a special edition of Odds and Ends, presenting Monday's headlines on Friday, Sam Yarnell. Start with the Knicks and Pacers. When we come back to do the show on Monday, will we be talking about Game 7 at Madison Square Garden?
I wish. Unfortunately, I think that we'll have a finals matchup set between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. You can tell how excited I am about that by the tone of my voice. Yeah. And I think the Oklahoma City Thunder will open around minus 400 to win that series. I don't think that series will be close. Yeah, Jason, that's what I'm thinking is going to come away from this Knicks series over the weekend.
All right, I'm going to say we have a Game 7 in New York at Madison Square Garden on Monday because the alternative is unthinkable for me. And by the way, Pat McAfee couldn't make it to New York. Shocker for game number 5. Something tells me his schedule will clear up, though, for Game 6 in Indianapolis on Saturday. You coward, you clown. Go away. What other Monday?
Wait. On that, really quick. I don't know if you saw this or not, but it was really funny that he had he tweeted at Grok, the Twitter.
I made one of the clown shots for anybody who follows me on X. I'm sure part of that was in response to the clown shot that I put up of him, because he is a clown. Just saying.
I thought it was funny that he tweeted at Grok asking it to stop making the
clown shots.
The clown faces.
Give me a couple other Monday headlines on a Friday.
All right, I actually think that when we come out of the weekend in Major League Baseball, there will be a new home run leader in Major League Baseball, and I don't think their name will be Shohei Ohtani or Aaron Judge. Kyle Schwarber is having one of the most criminally underrated seasons of all time right now, and I get it because there's a guy right up I-95 who's doing Barry Bonds-ish things. But Kyle Schwarber is so good, man. He's one of the best hitters in the NL, and he's been on a tear recently. So I think Kyle Schwarber will be in the home run lead, And yeah, not to say that Ohtani and Judge are going to have a bad weekend, but they're playing each other. There's going to be a lot of spotlight on them.
Yes.
And I think one of the big stories will be that, hey, both these guys are playing each other, but look at this other guy. He keeps hitting homers.
I actually watched the Phillies and Braves. I watched the Phillies and Braves play.
Great series.
Was
well,
a great series.
Kinda for the Phillies.
Yeah, it was. Watch those two teams go at it. All right, Sam, that's it. We're out of time. It's time to.
And Cal Raleigh, big dumper. That guy keeps hitting homers too, but no one cares about the Mariners.
Yeah, and you know what the shame of that is? They got a stud in the minors that they can't get up to the big leagues.
I know, Harry Ford. That guy's a beast.
Because they've got Cal Raleigh and they've got nowhere to put Ford. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe you trade him.
To the Nats.
It's going to do it for us. Hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you to Tino Pattigno. Thank you to Robert Littal. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Thanks to all of you for watching. Catch Sports Wrap weekends, and we'll see you back here on Monday.